Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, joined today by the NFL and NFL draft analyst, the key NFL writer over there at Yahoo.com. You know him very well from Twitter at Eric_Edholm. His name is Eric Edholm. It's not just a fancy fancy pseudonym or alter ego he's come up with on Twitter. Eric, what the hell's going on, brother?
You know what? It's a busy time, as you know. We've got playoffs, we've got head coaching and GM moves, we've got draft stuff, and it's a fun time. There's always like that period that wears you down during the regular season, and then you kind of get amped for the postseason and all the other movement that happens. So we're just powering through on adrenaline at this point.
Hey man, I didn't ask you pre-show, and I guess I don't know. Where do you live? Where are you based out of?
Yeah, I'm based out of the Chicago suburbs. My wife and I live about 40 minutes from the city, and I've been in the Chicago area now since 2002. So it's been a little while, and my family was here originally, so I have pretty strong roots in Chicago.
I was actually, man, I feel embarrassed to it. I feel as a Texan, I'm here in Texas. I've not embarrassed to admit it, but I was actually born when my mom was going to school at Northwestern at the Evanston General Hospital. So
no kidding, very cool.
Chicago suburbs. Whenever we used to watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off, she used to tell me that was the neighborhood that they lived in.
That's where we lived, right? Yeah. Northwestern's one of those places that if you look at my home on a map and Northwestern, you'll get there in 25 minutes. No, you got to take about 18 different roads to get there. I've made that trip a few times, and it's like a 7-hour journey actually. So
you gotta trek through some snow sometimes.
Yes.
Hey, just while I have you, dude, I can't I ask this all the time on the serious show when people call in and ask questions from Chicago. I won't answer their fantasy questions until they tell me where to get the best pizza there. Like, is there a place or a style or I know Chicago. I know folks in Chicago are pretty serious about their pizza.
They are, yeah. I mean, obviously, and I grew up in Boston too, so there's that whole New York, New Haven thing, and pizza. Obviously, you go to different parts of the country, you get different beliefs of what it actually is. The deep dish stuff here is very, sort of unique to Chicago, and it's not for everybody. But I will say, if you want to give the deep dish a try, or if you are a fan, Pequod's is kind of
I've heard of it.
Yep. The cool guy hipster spot. I mean, it's good too. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm not just but the off the radar one. This is for your real VIP insider people here. Art of Pizza. It's in this little strip mall on Western Avenue in the middle of nowhere in the city. And my wife and I used to go out of our way to get it. It wasn't too far, but that's kind of the insider spot. So I'm giving away some pretty good material here on your show.
All right, we're already off to a good start. And just out of curiosity, I don't want to make this a pizza podcast, but do you being from the Northeast, you still like the thin sliced pizza better, don't you? Just because that's what you grew up on, or do you actually have you actually gotten to where you actually like the deep? Because the deep dish stuff feels almost more like a dish,
like a pie.
Yeah, well, you got to eat it with a fork and knife. I think that's how I've eaten it.
Yeah.
Is that how you eat it? And do you like it better than the thin crust stuff that you get in New York or just around the Northeast?
Yeah, I'm trying to think which branch of my family I'm willing to offend the easiest here, but I like both for what they are. I mean, deep dish, like you said, it's not really pizza. It's more of a calzone type pie type thing, whatever. I remember ordering a large pizza for me and 2 Boston friends who were coming to visit me, and they're like, "You only order one pizza?" Because these are big dudes and they can throw down the thin slice 8 or 9 slices.
Right.
I said, "I think you'll reevaluate." And sure enough, we were passed out on the couch after 2 slices each. So it's an investment when you try to eat that stuff.
Literally, it's expensive to buy those pizzas.
Oh, it's like $40,
$35. Well, I guess I'll segue out of this by saying maybe Ohio is actually known for its large Italian populations. That's something I didn't ever know until I started playing music and touring around the U.S. They have really good Italian food there. And then, of course, Urban Meyer, Ohio State. Urban Meyer looks like he's going to be taking the job now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we go seamlessly into football. What do you think, dude? So the Jags – my deal is this: being down, I'm based just outside of Austin, Texas, and so before Steve Sarkisian got the job here, there was all the talk about how the boosters were they were going after Urban hard, right? $10 million, $11 million, 5-year guarantees, all this stuff, and just throwing the book at him, and you got the sense that he was legit. How should I say it? Like, there was always this health issue, right? And you think to yourself, well, it's a health issue, but these coaches, they got to coach. And like, if it were something like, if it was a heart issue or something like that, I'd be like, well, that's something you can kind of put in the back of your mind. And you kind of know it's coming down the pike a little bit later on, but it's not affecting your day-to-day right now. This, as I learn more and more about Urban's situation, it's like, this thing's actually something that's in his brain or in his head, where it actually like gives him bad headaches that are induced by stress. And so like when he's talking about his health, about taking a college job, he's not just talking about his, what somebody's kicking the can down the road later on. It's like, he's talking about his actual day-to-day, maybe that he goes around with a bad headache all day, or he can't sleep. And that sounds pretty bad. And so like, I understood, I'm like, he don't want to get back into football. He's got this job at Fox. Like, he works 20 hours a week. He has all this money. He has restaurants up in Ohio still. And then all of a sudden it's like, now he wants to go back to the grind of coaching. Like, these NFL coaches sleep in their office. I get that they have $75 million in cap space, and maybe some more will open up. Trevor Lawrence. I would just like to hear your thoughts on it in general. The fit. What do you think about what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for me to speak to Urban Meyer's, health concerns. Obviously, like you said, it might be a kind of a neurological thing or something that he's had to, try different medications to see what works, what doesn't, how often does it crop up? I mean, obviously I don't dabble into medicine, but my wife, she's a doctor. So I kind of listen to her very closely or whatever, but yeah, it's hard to know. And I'm sure questions about his health will come up as soon as his introductory press conference comes. And, is this the kind of thing you're going to bail after 3 years or what have you? But this has been in the works for a while, from what I can tell. And I understand, obviously there were Texas and maybe other schools that probably thought they had a shot at him, pry him away from his cushy TV job. And he was good at it too. I'm sure you saw
great.
Him,
very good.
Explaining concepts, and making it easy to understand for people who are, either experts or laymen. I mean, it was great, but I think that itch always was there. And I think money certainly has a big part of it. The Trevor Lawrence I'm sure he's smitten with him as a talent. Obviously, there's Justin Fields too, if he wants to go the Ryan Day Ohio State route. But I mean, I also don't dismiss the idea of him going back to the state of Florida, a quick little hop, skip, and a jump from Gainesville. And I just sort of always felt like Urban never felt like he got the recognition, right or wrong. I'm not trying to. I just feel like he never thought he got the recognition for what he did at Florida. There was a lot of stuff that went on there that obviously kind of, crossed the line, whatever. And he got, reamed for, got in trouble for, had to walk out of the job for. Health was cited as the reason why. And now he gets to go in the NFL with a well-paying job, the robo quarterback, and a team that has nowhere to go but up. I mean, it probably looked pretty good to him on paper, and there's nobody who smells an opportunity better than Urban Meyer. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I just think he has a great instinct for, this is a good spot for me. I can do something here, and he's done that every stop of the way.
What do you think about just what do you think about the idea? And what I've heard some people say is like, oh, well, he's in for a rude awakening because this year it gets to be like he was in college, where he can go out and he can affect the kind of players that he's going to get. Whereas in the NFL, it's like you line up and you get in order and you pick your draft slot in this spot, and then you let the others go. And if your pro scouting department likes a player and he gets waived, like you lined up in your waiver order and you can pick him out then. But it's not like you can just by your own force of your personality or your work ethic can get better players than others. He seems like he'll have a chance to really have a supermarket sweep this year. Yeah. But what do you think? I mean, is that like, it's like that seems like a debate online that people are having. Do you think that's going to be anything that a bit of trouble that he could run into as an NFL coach.
Yeah, I mean, right. The idea that, there are 85-man rosters in college football, and you can just stock up on as many 5-stars as you can possibly sign and have a quarterback in the works every year. And I mean, obviously, his spread system certainly, came from other people, but he made it his own, and there's the X's and O's aspect of it. But to me, I mean, you're still kind of the CEO, and I think people at Ohio State certainly treat their program like a franchise, like an NFL franchise would. I mean, interpret that however you may. Yeah. Florida probably has those same, grandeur delusions and all that. I don't mean delusions, but you know what I mean. The belief that this thing is a huge operation, and Urban Meyer is, the buck stops with him. So from that kind of CEO standpoint, with an NFL head coach, I think what I've heard from people who have been talented coaches who have flamed out as head coaches, end up as good coordinators or what have you, I think oftentimes they underestimate the responsibilities on the job. The handling of the media. You're the first guy everybody blames when things don't go right. You have to oversee offense, defense, special teams, personnel, the whole bit. I mean, it's a lot. So I think he has the ability to kind of handle all that stuff while also having a great grasp on offensive football and what it takes to win. Can he do it with the 53-man roster and with his only recruiting window coming in free agency when the Jags have money to spend? That may be his one opportunity to use those college recruiting skills and kind of use and transfer them to the NFL. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. It sounds like this could really end up being a very, very interesting division, especially with the Texans reloading. The Colts might be on the cusp. The Titans are kind of this sort of wild card option out there and doing their own thing. Mike Vrabel came from Ohio State, where he was the DC for Urban. I don't know. There's just so many angles to this. I'm just totally fascinated. All
right. Well, moving out west, it seems like you. I can always tell when national writers like yourself have good scoops on stories or might have a good beat on things, because right after something gets announced, you confirm it, and then you have your article ready to go that very second the news breaks. That's how it was with you and George Paton, the new Broncos GM. I'd been saying I'd gotten slandered by Broncos fans for saying, "Look, man, I know Elway's your golden boy, but his time has gotten past stale. He's made too many bad quarterback decisions. You could keep him on as part of the organization, but get some new blood in there." And I'd just like to hear your unfortunately, since we hopped on here, I just seen your tweet about tweeting out your feature on him. I would just like to get some background from you on George Paton, because I texted with a friend of mine who used to work with the Vikings. He's with a different team now, but I was just saying, well, did you like the dude? What's he like? And he said, he's my favorite guy in the building. He said he had the best job in football for 14 years as Spielman's backboard. He's sharp as hell. He's a true tape scout. He's going to do great. So, and that's from a guy who I really trust and like his style. I was able to see just a quick 20-second clip of Paton just sort of saying hello to the Denver fan base and saying that he's happy to get on board. But other than that, I don't really know much about him. Can you give us the background on the new Denver Broncos GM?
Yeah, I mean, he was, he was a California kid. He grew up there, went to UCLA, was teammates with Troy Aikman for, I believe, a year, maybe two. But, defensive back, really, was a sort of the try-hard guy, didn't have the athletic traits to make it as a professional football, but, always kind of wanted to stay in the game and kind of worked his way up the chain a little bit. And he and Rick crossed paths, and they became allies and really, trusted companions. And I believe it was first the Bears somewhere around 2000, 2001. I'm off the top of my head. I'm going here, but and then to Miami when Rick was GM there. And then they both made the jaunt up to Minnesota when he got the job, like you said, 14 years ago. And, the Vikings have had a lot of good front office talent. They've had strong, scouting department there. Scott Studwell for years. And obviously, Stud was the guy. And so, Rob Brzezinski handled the cap, and George was kind of, Rick's consigliere. He was his second in command. And And also one of the things, like you mentioned, he's a tape scout, and that's an important distinction to make. This is this guy who grew up as a grinder, and I don't think has lost any of that work ethic. But, what he did that a lot of his contemporaries didn't do 10, 12 years ago, or maybe even more recent than that, was embrace the analytics side of it. I know everybody gets excited about that, but he helped kind of create the analytics sort of platform that the Vikings have adapted and then, but basically used now for a long time. That obviously carries a lot of weight now, because the analytic portion of it, as people always say, it's like extra information. Why would you turn it down? You're not going to use it as your sole force, but it's part of the deal. And George could be selective, right? It was kind of like Eric DeCosta in Baltimore, or Chris Ballard, where these guys were getting interview requests almost every year, but George turned down a lot. And he got to a second interview with the Browns last year and withdrew, which is, usually at that point of the process, you're kind of in, right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
But he cited some concerns about the ownership structure and the power structure of the Browns, which, at the time felt like a very legitimate gripe. Who's calling the shots? The owner's handing in draft cards with Manziel, and what do we have here? So I don't mean to be so long-winded about it, but
no, it's great.
And George almost was the 49ers GM when John Lynch got it. It was almost going to be Shanahan and George Payton. And, it appealed to George because he's a California guy. And I think the opening and just the opportunity looked so good. But, he turned down other opportunities. And from people I talked to, this was kind of a dream job for him, even if some onlookers might say, hey, you got a lot of work to do. you got some things to clean up.
Shanahan, maybe like his dad, Kubiak, Vikings. There could have been some kind of some sort of connection around that time. But that all makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I think he's probably happy with how it ended up, and I'll bet Lynch is happy with how it probably ended up best for all parties. What did you think? He had to be part of the decision to draft Justin Jefferson. How big of a surprise was Justin Jefferson to you this year? Were you on the bandwagon? I was a little bit on the deal. It's like, why did you draft Justin Jefferson? He played slot the whole time in college, and you have a guy that's a pseudo sort of outside Z stretch Z / slot wide receiver, and Adam Thielen. It didn't seem like the best fit, and then he comes into the league and makes me look like a total dumbass.
I think I had Jefferson as my number 24 overall prospect, so right around where they took him. I like
where he went, right? 24.
25, somewhere in that range. Yeah, so within a couple picks of that spot. So I think I had a high second round grade on him. I think I only gave out like 21, 20, 22 first round grades last year. So it was like right below the cusp of first round grade. And, I said the same question that you did, which is, I'm not saying slot receivers aren't important. Of course they are. But for the reasons you pointed out, is there – because when he played outside in 2018, now granted it wasn't the same offense.
Wasn't the Joe Brady offense.
Arriving. Wasn't – he wasn't terrible. He just wasn't nearly as effective, So when I talked to people at LSU about him, though, they were like, bro, you got to knock that off. The inside-outside thing. This dude is a gamer. Like they raved about him. And when they didn't rave as much about some other players, you could tell it was coming from a very earnest place. It wasn't like they were just talking up he's the best. You got to take him. And, no. They were saying, look, if there's a guy you're going to doubt from our class, and they had a big one last year, it should be Justin Jefferson. I felt a level of trust from the school that made me think he was going to be good. 1,400 yards good in year one? No, I didn't see that coming at all.
Well, and I mean, I don't think it's that egregious looking. I mean, I had him as my wide receiver 3 behind CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy.
There you go.
But that seems like probably about where you had him based on the way that the board felt, depending on how you felt about Ruggs. So it's like my thing now is Justin Jefferson has surpassed he's been a phenom. And now we're onto this draft, and we have Jamar Chase, who sat out this year. And when you look at that Joe Burrow, that culmination of the final culmination of the Joe Brady offense, and where you had Burrow and you had all the more weapons than you can even count, right? But Jamar Chase was kind of the alpha. It seemed like to me, and if he's the alpha and Justin Jefferson's also there, you start thinking to yourself, "Holy crap!" But then I just think, well, on Monday, I just watched what might be one of the best college wide receivers I've ever seen in my life in Devonta Smith, and I've already started thinking in my head, this is going to be impossible to decide which one of these guys I like better. Do you have a take on this yet, Eric Edholm?
Yeah, and I mean, I need to go back and rewatch Jamar Chase because obviously I saw him at 19 years old. My goodness, right? Do what he did last year, the 20 touchdowns and everything else, and just make some phenomenal plays with. I mean, he's such an intense player, and he's not going to test with elite speed. He doesn't possess elite size, but he has elite competitiveness and ball skills and things like that. So, I'm not worried about it. I mean, like the traits are important, and it applies to Devonta Smith too, but you can't get hung up on, a tenth of a second here or an inch here or a couple of pounds there. If you consistently see these guys separating and giving their quarterbacks terrific windows to throw into, and then have that yards after the catch, that tackle breaking ability. I mean, catch the football and then do something with it. I mean, not to make it too simple, but like both guys can do it. I'm not worried about either. Like I get it. There aren't a whole lot of 175-pound receivers in this league who succeed at that height, especially the longer guys. But I'm fine with Devonta. I think I'm going to end up, and I haven't finalized the grade, I suppose I'm going to end up with Devonta being slightly higher. My question is that going to be recency bias? That's what I'm hoping to figure out when I go back and watch 5 or 6 games of Jamarr from last year, because, as a scout once told me, he's like, we have the combine right before the draft, roughly a couple months, and everybody, the testers always get drafted higher. Like do we forget that they're football players? And I think it applies to this year with all the opt-outs.
Do you think we're gonna? Well, I have very little. I'm just thankful that we get the Senior Bowl. Yeah. If you would have told me back in September, it's like, man, I can tell you right now that you can have the Senior Bowl, but you're not gonna have the combine. I'd have said deal. I'd have said at least I get one. I'm thankful we get the Senior Bowl, and we can go, right. Like we could be in the stands, we can watch practice as media. First question: Do you think there's going to be a combine? And 2, I mean, is there a snowball's chance in hell that media is allowed in any sort of capacity this year? What do you think? I see you at the combine every single year. I know you're always there too. So yeah. What do you think? Is our streak going to get blown up here or what?
Yeah, I don't know. The signs are pointing very much against the combine happening at the originally scheduled time of, late February, early March or whatever it is. So, I wouldn't plan on it occurring in Indianapolis at that time. And the reasons are multiple, but the NCAA tournament has already announced that starting with March 14th, I believe, off the top of my head.
I forgot about that. That's true.
All they're having the tournament games like a bubble. They're having 5 different whatever. So
it's a good town for it. It's a good town for it. I mean, the way it's built in the downtown. I mean, you know how walkable everything is and how interconnected it all is. It's a good
convention town. Yeah, that's really what it is. It's a great sports town too. And I mean, what they're worried about is that, the hospital staff's going to get overwhelmed 2 weeks before, the week before the tournament, and then all these other people come in. It's just going to create this like COVID hotspot, and vaccinations are just trickling in and things like that. So, conditions won't be remarkably better, I don't think, between now and the beginning of March. So that's the local concern. The convention center doesn't list it on its events calendar. People's money has been refunded. People who applied for vendor space at the combine, their money has been refunded. In a lot of cases, hotels have been refunded in some cases. So my bet is it's not going to happen there. I suspect they're going to do 4 regional combines, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, Northeast, whatever, or something in the Midwest. But yeah, I mean, I don't know at this point. But media, you got me. I don't I don't believe so.
Maybe if they do a regional one to set up more like a pro day, like you can go to, like I could go to the Dallas one or something like that and have to stand off in the social distanced area or something. I mean, maybe they can give us something like that.
Dallas, California, Chicago
and
whatever, and then
DC or something.
Somewhere like that to kind of get everybody sort of close by.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. It's gonna, Eric, is it gonna make your job? I know golly. I mean, we focus mainly at Roster Watch. We focus mainly on the wideouts and the running backs because we're a fantasy company.
Yep.
But it's like we kind of need those numbers to put in certain models and stuff like that. It's gonna be a lot of these guys. I don't necessarily want to be dealing with pro day numbers on all of them. You feel like it's going to make your job harder with no combine, or might it be a way to kind of open your eyes up to say, you know what, this will be a year where I take a step back and my process is being forced to be refined a little bit here to where I don't rely so much on that, so much on that empirical data.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think we'll get heights and weights and arm lengths and all that stuff wherever. You can get that stuff done pretty readily. But obviously the 40-yard dash, the 10-yard split, the 3-cone drill, the vertical jump, horizontal jump, it paints a picture, right? Obviously, my rule of thumb, and it's not by any means a hard and fast rule, but if you're in the bottom 20% of a category, it's going to kind of raise a red flag for me. If you're in the upper or even 25%, whatever, the upper 25%, it's certainly going to set you apart. The middle 50, there's really not a huge difference. But yeah, I mean, sometimes there are those shocking numbers that, like, the Washington running back who ended up on the Dolphins this year, Ahmed.
Salvon
Ahmed. Yeah. He ran a 4.38 in high school, but ran a 4.63 at the combine. You know what I mean? Or you see these numbers that just don't make any sense. Allen Robinson ran a 4.6, and other guys who are just so out of whack. You go, Dalvin Cook had a terrible workout. So some of these things can be red herrings. They can make you think he's not athletic. Well, he is. He had a bad game or a bad day, or whatever. But yeah, does it take information away from us? Yes. But to your point, maybe that helps us focus on the game tape, the performance, other traits and how they stand out and things like that.
Sometimes it takes something like interfering in your life or your job or something like that to help you like refine a process, and you just kind of take it as it goes.
Remove the clutter.
Right. Yeah. We'll just see it. We'll just see what happens. All right. Again, we're talking with Eric Edholm. You can find him on Twitter at Eric_Edholm, and all of his content over there at Yahoo Sports, NFL Draft. He does it all over there, and certainly can't recommend enough that you give him a follow over there on Twitter. I just wanted to one last thing I wanted to do with you before I got you out of here is I have a free agency list pulled up here, and I just wanted to talk over some wide receivers and some different position players. And a lot of these guys will get franchise tagged and stuff.
Yeah.
We're not going to see a bunch of big blockbuster. Who knows what we see? It's Jesus, who even knows these days?
Right.
But if they have to go to a new team, and I must tell everybody that this isn't anything where I sent you these in advance. You have no idea what I'm about to ask, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot. But if they go to a new team, that's the rule. What new team would you like to see them with?
Okay.
All right. So how about Chris Godwin?
He's pretty good. Yeah.
He's pretty good at football, right?
Yeah, he's good at the sport. Even with that terrible game against Washington, I mean, he still had 80 yards or whatever. He could have had about 150 in that game when he caught it. But yeah, I mean, the 2019 season, I felt like really gave us a glimpse of what he could become. And obviously there were some injuries this year and, things that kind of helped throw him off the track a little. Like you said, I assume the Buccaneers are going to heavily consider franchise tagging him. That's a great question. I would probably say that the New York Jets are in dire need of wide receivers.
Yeah, I like it.
Have to be one of the ones involved. The New York Giants, I believe, are also going to be. It could end up being a New York thing. I have to think that they're going to be invested in getting more wideouts around Slayton and maybe moving on from Evan Engram and things like that. So, and there's obviously a ton of receivers. So, I don't know, maybe Miami. If they're not going to use a receiver at number 3 overall, they could be a possibility.
Oh, yeah.
But I sort of feel like New York could be in play here.
All right. How about just a few more? What about Allen Robinson? Man, that guy doesn't seem like he's ever happy anywhere he is, and I might not be either if I have had the quarterbacks he's had in his career. You think he's gonna go anywhere? And where would you like to see him end up if he did?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think he could go almost anywhere and upgrade at his quarterback spot.
Yeah.
That's the good news. There are a lot of options, and I guess I'll be curious what the money is going to be for him. I mean, if we're talking about Godwin potentially going north of $20 million per year, if we're talking about Kenny Golladay potentially going north of $20 million a year, will he believe that he also should be getting that kind of money?
Do you think he should?
It's close. He's really good. I feel like when you watch him enough, and I'm here in Chicago and obviously see quite a bit of him or whatever, it sort of feels like his production would be 20% greater almost anywhere else. So yeah, I think that's fair. Like, okay, you tell me Juju Smith-Schuster's not worth $20 million a year, I get it. But with him, I would go up to 20, I think, on Robinson, and maybe the loser of the guy. I think there's a little more appeal in Godwin than there is his fellow Penn State guy. But so whichever team doesn't get him, let's say Giants and Jets end up in that mix, I could see the other one being involved. We mentioned Miami before. I'm sure there's another quarterback or wide receiver needy team off the top of my head that I'm blanking on, but those are the ones that sort of come to mind right away, and at least in my head.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about some of the good landing spots for these wide receivers, and I think if we talked about like a Corey Davis or one of these other guys, we'd probably come up with some of the same kind of spots. But just one more wide receiver that I'm going to ask you about a quarterback. What about Will Fuller? Do you think he stays with the Texans, and where could you see a good landing spot for him be?
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. I mean, obviously the speed, just the effect that has on an offense, right? Even if he's not catching, every 9 route he runs. I mean, you got to respect it. And there's something about that, I mean, when you have elite NFL speed, that's a different deal. Does he drop passes? Yes. Is he inconsistent game to game? Absolutely. But he was never a number 1, obviously, where DeAndre Hopkins was for a long time. You don't expect him to be, but I guess it depends on whether the Packers, what they do in this postseason. But if let's say
I knew you were going to say it.
That's
right?
What
I would have said too. Yeah,
I'm just trying to think of a different one than we've already named so far, and they're the one.
It's the Packers. It's the best answer. It's the best.
Aaron Rodgers needs a deep threat. They didn't get one in the draft, so that's one that makes some sense. I feel like they've always kind of kept an eye on him and maybe inquired with him and stuff. So yeah, I would say that's a spot that if the money doesn't get too crazy, because it's a good receiver draft too. You don't necessarily have to spend this year. I don't know. It's very interesting.
All right. One last one here. And this isn't really the same about you picking where they want to go. This is Eric Edholm, GM of what the
Chicago, 33rd NFL team.
Yeah, whatever. The Chicago Northside, Ghostface Killers or
eaters,
something like that. Yeah. All right. So it is to start your expansion team, you get one free agent quarterback to start things out with, and it's either Jameis Winston or Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Wow. I mean, I suppose my instinct would be to say Fitzpatrick, knowing that here's a guy who has willingly been the table setter. Essentially, he gets signed, and then they draft a quarterback almost everywhere he goes. He knows the deal. He's getting paid for it. He goes out. He's ready at a moment's notice. If you bench him, there's so much appealing about him, even at, what is he, 38 now?
I'm not sure. I don't know his age.
Maybe you could save a few bucks on Winston, but I want to like Jameis. I really do. I think there's some traits about him they're really intriguing. But I said it this offseason, I said if Tampa Bay, or if Tom Brady rather, follows his typical turnover rate of the past 6 years or whatever, they're going to save 30 possessions this year. I mean, and they did, and they're winning. I mean, that's the difference right there. So Fitzpatrick can get in that turf where he starts throwing the ball to the other team, but I would feel more comfortable with Fitzpatrick on a 1-year deal or whatever, and then, worry about drafting his replacement, I guess.